All right. So today we're going to explore social type. My name is Habib Khan. My type is right there. And yeah, so the problem we're trying to explore today is that social types seems to add complexity into the OPS system. This is like kind of the 10th and 11th coin on top of the 9 coins that already exist. So the question is, how does social types fit within the rest of the OPS system? And in order to explore this, we have this overview of how the different social coins works, um, social animals, and there'll be new information as well as some old information, but mostly, you'll see how everything actually mechanically works together, um, as well as social congruency. So that'll be the third topic. And finally, we'll have a bonus topic, so stay tuned till the end. And if you enjoy the whole video, give it a like and subscribe, and leave a comment if you learned something new or something was interesting in here. Yeah, continuing on here, we have the social coins. So we can't really talk about social type without talking about the first coin, which is flex versus friends. I'm using alternate naming here as well, just trying things out, trying out different words, different SI words, ego versus super ego. And we see the first kind of combination of, the social one and the social three both have flex, and the social two and four both have friends. So it's kind of interesting how it kind of staggers there. Um, Flex being more DI like and friends being more DE like. There's additional information in a previous video that I did where I actually go over these coins a bit more. So you can check that out. Continuing with the coins, the other one we already know about is responsibility versus specialize, or I'm calling it jack of all trades versus master of one, which is more the specializing one. So the social one and two, they have the responsibility. Now, the specialized belongs to the social three and four as a savior. So it's basically you want to see which side of the coin are you on. Everybody has everything. So we all have all four of these needs, social needs, if you want to call it that. It's just a matter of like which side is up, which side is a bit easier. Um, but continuing on with some, let's say, maybe new information or something that doesn't get talked about that much. You may have discovered this already, but there's something called a social decider versus social observer. Now, you could come up with a different name for it. It's up to you, like what you want to call this, but I kind of give up on the naming for now. I mean, I could revisit it at a certain point, but this is the combination. This is a different permutation of the social types where you have the social one and four that are similar. Because having the flex and the friends on the opposite poles, that's gonna make you more decider like. So myself, for example, being a social one, yeah, I'm a social decider. There's that, and then you have the social observers, like Dave, for example, as a social two, and yeah, you have the social threes as well as social observers. So the deciders are going to be more people oriented, and the social observers are going to be even more thing oriented, at least in the social spectrum. So this being a new coin, I feel like it has some highlighting worthy of it. But new coin is like a bit strong. It's more like a new way to look at things. That's what I'd rather say. Um, it's also a really good cross check. So I know a lot of people out there are trying to type their friends, family, and themselves. So this is a good way to really check. Hey, if I'm between social two and four, then you may want to check decider observer. If you're more decidery in the social spectrum, then you might be a social four. And if you're more observery in that case, you'd be a social two if you're debating the two and four. But yeah, we'll be going through some examples here today. And starting off with our Navy SEAL buddies, David Goggins and Jocko Willink. So on the left, we have the flexor, David Goggins. He is, even though he's in the Navy SEALs, which is known for team operations, he more goes off on his own, does his own thing, puts his, you know, the burden on himself. Who's going to carry the boats? I'm going to carry the boats. No, I don't know. But yeah, that's a inside joke with a David Goggins guy. he puts a lot of pressure on himself and is trying to see how far he is willing to go. So that's more the flexing side. And continuing on with these examples to kind of flesh out the details of what these coins kind of mean on one side or the other, we have Jocko, who's more the team guy. And it's really useful to compare, and that's what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to compare OPS types that are similar, people who have this similar types. Like in this case, they're both SETE, play, consume, blast. David is double feminine on the left, and Jocko is double masculine on the right. But yeah, Jocko is very much a team guy. He's trying to work up and down the chain of command. And he's doing like a really good job working, whether it's with his boss or whether it's with his subordinates. He's able to really communicate across friends. Like everybody is kind of on an equal playing field. He's just trying to get the job done. Continuing on, we have responsibility versus specialized with Alex Hermosi and Andrew Huberman here. They're both ESTPs, so we're continuing this like blockhead trend, and with the examples. And Alex is trying to build different skills to master business, actually. So he's not actually mastering anything in particular. He's trying to own business, which is trying to wear all the different hats. So he advocates for people who are getting into entrepreneurship to master high value skills. And so by building different skills in different areas, he's able to do anything and give even more freedom and autonomy to himself so he could build more businesses or do more things or have more freedom. Andrew Huberman, on the other hand, he has something called the Huberman Lab, which is interesting seeing the flex come in there where his name is in the thing. And yeah, so he's kind of working his specialty of neuroscience and psychology and that kind of thing of understanding, for example, he has great videos on ADHD as well as dopamine and different neurotransmitters, and he demystifies all that stuff for the public. So, yeah, he has his role, his specialty role, and they're both ESTPs, very similar in type, but doing very different things. But they're both work oriented as a 2 and 3. Is a little bit more work oriented. Yeah, so continuing on with our more interesting coin here, the social decider versus social observer, we have two ENTJs, more blockheads, got to do it. Joe Rogan is a podcast guy, and he is all about kind of bringing his friends into his podcast. And, he got canceled at some point, and it's like, which friends are your real friends? And, it gets decider on top of decider, basically. So, it was really cool to see like who's sticking up for him and things like that. But that's just people on people. Whereas Zoe Saldana on the right, who is also TESE, she is way more into acting, which is her craft, mastering the craft, which is work oriented. So social observer, from a social observing perspective, she's kind of taking the steam off of the decider OPS type that she has. So even though they're both TESE, Zoe Saldana is able to kind of like look at work, whether she's working on like the Guardians of the Galaxy thing or the Avatar movie with James Cameron. She's able to kind of distract herself in the work of everything. Where Joe Rogan is really working with people all the time, young Jamie and everything. Yeah. So continuing on here, we have the social needs stack. So those were the social coins, and just moving on to the next, we have this social needs stack is going to be very relevant. Just seeing what you have in your top 3, right? And so, for example, with the number 4s, you got friends, specialize, and responsibility in the top 3, flex last. And with the number 1s, you got flex, responsibility, and specialize in the top 3. Whichever function you have, whichever social function, if you want to call it that, you have first, it's going to have a huge impact because it kind of trickles down where the thing you have first is really going to matter a lot. That's going to be like your primary lens of focus. And yeah, just keep that in mind. You already know this stuff probably. Yeah, so the social animals, starting with the first one, is flex. This is the more DI like one. And I'm seeing it as more consumed plus sleep. So I don't really care about choosing one over the other in terms of like which one's first or second. But what's more important is seeing that both consume and sleep are appearing in the social flex. So you have the DI plus the OE, as well as the DI plus the OI. So because you're combining one with two, with the savior need for responsibility, as well as the third social need of specialize. So you're doubling up on the DI, you're doubling up on the flexing, and you have you're split in the observers. So that's why it's more decide alike. It's kind of double observing in a way, double social observing, but you're really doubled down on that DI, on that flex. Um, yeah, so that's why it's consume and consume sleep. This is more mopey. The number two, as you can see, is going to be play plus consume. So with the responsibility first and the friend second, that's going to be more play like. Um, and you have the responsibility first with the flex third, that's going to be consume like. So you have the play consume basically skibs as the number twos. Moving down, just continuing on with that trend, is you have the sleep blast douchebags or the guru types, right? And it makes sense that specializing would be kind of more guru oriented with the doubling up on the OI. So it's like, as it's a social observer, you have that observing function that you're going all in on, which is the OI. um, yeah, just like, for example, thinking back to Huberman, he's really doubling down on his neuroscience stuff, adding a podcast on top of the lab. It's all just on that particular topic. And then you have the DIDE split. So you're going to be balanced with the flex as well as the friends, even in the animals. So the sleep plus blast, one of them is going to be more DI oriented and the other animal is going to be more DE oriented. Again, it doesn't matter which one is first. The point is that these are going to be your top two social animals. Finally, we got the friends, which is going to be blast plus play. The DE friends is interacting with the OI specialize, and the DE friends is also interacting with the third social function of responsibility, which is more OE like. So that'll be social play. So that's like the theory side of it, but we got to have examples. So we got our mopey buddy here, Mr. Beast. He's nobody's buddy. He's just at the top of the YouTube game, consume sleep, moping it. Um, and yeah, continuing on there, we got Owen Cook as the consume play, and as well as so he's more the responsibility oriented. So this is where you kind of get straight flushes. So I'm trying to give examples where people are not only in a social way consume play or lining up with their or not only do they have those social animals, but they also have an OPS type that corresponds with that. As we'll be exploring congruency very soon. We also have Susan David here, who is more blast plus sleep. Um, she's actually blast first and sleep second. So she's a specializer. And finally, we have a number 4 here with Ed Milet, who is his OPS type is blast play, and his social needs kind of align with the blast play. So we'll be looking into more examples later on. But yeah, that's the social animals. It's good to see people lining up. You're not always going to line up, and that's exactly why we're going to talk about social congruency. Okay, so the EJ number 1 versus the IP number 1 is going to be very different because the IP number 1 is already DI in the human need perspective. So when you have a social need of flexing on top of that, you're going to be really doubling down on the DI. And let's say you're double activated in your ops type and your DI, like you're double activated consume or sleep, plus you're a number 1, then you're going to be what I'd call like triple activated DI. So we're going to kind of explore that down the line. But you got the EJ number 1, which is going to be kind of split between DE and DI because their human need is telling them, hey, I need to care about all the people. But their flexing social need, they're like, oh, I need to show up. I need to put my name on it and I need to do something big or legendary, like, Gary Vee. Then we have the IJ number 2s. So these are going to be more kind of ADHD like. So we got, for example, Casey Neistat, and I kind of pull examples all the time, but they're going to be more split between the OI and the OE, like Casey Neistat. And we have the EP number twos, which are going to line up way more on the OE. So they're doubling down on the OE no matter what, right? Because they have the social need for OE and they already have OE at the top. Continuing on, we have the EP number three, which is going to be split between the observing, the the gathering, the gathering human need as well as the social need for kind of narrowing down in specialty. So that'll be the contradiction there, as well as having the IJs will be number three. They'll be doubling down on the OI with the human need as well as the social need. So the thing here is that the OCD like nature of the number three is like sometimes an EP could mistype themselves as an IJ because they're actually savior specialized. And they may have that really need for control and narrowing down, but it may actually be their social need that's doing it. So whether you're a number four or a number three EP, that OI that comes from the social need to specialize, that's gonna potentially cause you to mistype yourself or even diagnose yourself with the OCD, um, which at least that could be to some extent true if you really have that social need for specializing, similar with the IJs and the ADHD. Continuing on, we have IPs that are number four, which are kind of out of alignment. So the less congruent is on the left, and the more congruent is on the right. If you picked up on that by now, we got the EJs that are number four, which are going to be way more in alignment with the DE already being, at the top. It's not to say that one is better than the other. The congruency, the first is incongruency. Those are, maybe incongruent has like a negative annotation to it or negative connotation to it, but it's not really that way. Um, yeah, so IP number fours are going to be split between their DI and DE, but the EJs are going to be doubling down on the DE with the friends. Okay, so the first example we have here is Arnold Schwarzenegger and Conor McGregor. So Conor McGregor is the IP, Arnold is the EJ, and so they're both kind of successful, if you could say that. And so it goes to show that whether you're congruent or incongruent, you'll definitely find your way as a number one in that case. And then we have Layla Hermosi, who is an INTJ, and then we got Vladimir Zelensky, who is an ESFP, my type twin. He's crushing it, and but yeah, he's doubling down on the OE, whereas Layla Hermosi is going to be more OE like, even though she's an IJ. She's able to pick up all these skills in business, things like that. Yeah, so we got Henry Cavill, who's a number three, who's an EP, and then we got Chris D'Elia, who is a number three, and he's an IJ, which lines up for him. Down here, though, we have Keanu Reeves, who's an IP number four, an ISTP, and then we have the other Chris D'Elia. Just kidding, Chris DeStefano here, and he's a number four EJ. So that kind of lines up perfectly, as a comedian. It's good to see these couple comedians on the right and actors on the left there. Yeah, so just moving on here with the social modalities. So this is the bonus slide because, you know, this is kind of more experimental topic. Maybe you'll agree with it, maybe you won't. So uh, the number one I'm seeing as double masculine. It seems, kind of thick skinned, thin skinned. Did I say thick? Okay. Thin skinned because they can't take a punch, right? So with the flexing, it seems to be putting kind of masculine front, in the DE, and then it's kind of feminine on the back end because it's actually kind of soft. There's nothing behind the flex. So we see the number ones as double masculine, the number twos as MF, right? The friends is more feminine energy. So having that friends second is going to make it more MF like. And number threes I'm seeing as FM. Number fours are double feminine. So friends being the most feminine of all of them, where it's like feminine DE as well as feminine sensing. So something to say about the number threes and having feminine sensing, it's more the masculine intuition of specialize. So the thing with specializing and like masculine intuition, it's like you have to know what your Jesus path is. So that's like you conceptually understand what role you're fitting in into society, which is why I'm seeing these modalities line up. So, for example, I'm a number one that's double masculine. So that's a little too much like number one energy in terms of like just lining up with the double masculine. It's going to be congruent, at least in the sexual modality perspective. But if you have, let's say, your double feminine number one, you're going to have more of the kind of feminine energy. Like people might underestimate you. So that, I remember Dave at some point he said that you got to watch out for the number ones that are double feminine because they'll kind of sneak it by and get you. Speaking of which, we got our first examples here with Bezos on the left, who is a number one and he's double feminine. So that guy is, you better watch out for him, and you might not see him coming. Then we got Gary Vee on the right, who you can definitely see coming from like 10 miles away. He's, doing his thing, double masculine, as well as number one. So from a social modality perspective, his sexual modalities are lining up to the uh, number one modality. Continuing on, we have Layla Hermosi, who um, is FM in real life, right? So she's her OPS type is FM, NIFI, as well as Tom Bilyeu here, who's MF. So he's more on the congruent side. Again, we have the congruence on the right and incongruence on the left. Um, and the unfortunate thing with Layla is that in her comment section, like people will call her out as like, "Hey, you're acting like a dude," and so that's a little mean and stuff like that. But I think it's because the number two energy is so like masculine in the sensor. So just to say something about that, the responsibility feels like physical. It feels like outward. It seems like it's in the real world, like a practical thing. So the responsibility has like the practical bent to it. So that's why that even though Layla Hermosi is a visual, which you'd think is a feminine type, like people are kind of calling her out as being more like masculine or like bro like. Whereas if you compare with Tom Bilyeu, uh, who's actually MF, it just lines up straight, and maybe that kind of contributes to like sexism. I'm realizing now as I'm talking, like it maybe contributes to like the sexism in the business world because responsibility is kind of like a more masculine thing. But yeah, again, this is experimental. That's my disclaimer. It's my opinions, things like that. But yeah, with Tom, he's like kind of perfectly aligned with the MF energy of the number two as well as his own. Continuing on here, we have Susan David on the right, who is FM, with her ops type as well as her social type, the number three. So she's specializing and it's not a problem. And Andrew Huberman, he is MF. And so he, doesn't seem like the most broiest of guys because of the social modality of the three. He's like so busy doing his thing. It's like, um, yeah, he might not have time to like play a basketball game or something, or maybe he does, but that is just anecdotal. Um, but yeah, it kind of has a more FM vibe to it. He's making a name for himself, that kind of thing, and it has that sensitivity on the back end with the feminine flexing, the feminine identity of the flexor because they're so much putting a masculine front. On the back end they might be really nervous, so you might see him like for example like referencing other people, like kind of scared people will come after him. He's like, all right, let me give credit to this person or that person. But yeah, continuing on here, we have double feminine Keanu Reeves, who lines up perfectly with the number four and everybody loves him. But not only Keanu, but everybody also loves this double masculine dude, Ed Milet, who's so clearly double masculine. But because he's a number four, everyone kind of falls in love with him because when you really like talk to him and all the people he interviews, on the YouTube videos and such, they kind of really love him because there's not like a selfish bone in his body in that way. Not only being an EJ, but also having that number four. Even though he's double masculine, he's not scaring people away. But yeah, that's really cool. So the social modalities is a pretty experimental kind of section here. That's why it's a bonus slide. But yeah, I want to know kind of what you're seeing. Does this resonate with you? Is it interesting to you? I want to thank you for watching. And if there are interesting things, let me know in the comments. Like and subscribe. And I do have typing options available for if you want to know your social type. I have a link in the description for helping you get your social type. Finally, yeah, if you already know your social type and you don't know what to do with it, like I can also coach you because I'm seeing a lot of things you can do in real life to actually move forward with all this stuff. But anyway, hope you have a great day and hope you enjoyed watching. Take care.